Ready. Thank you for the invitation. Things are really bad, so I'm kind of like I have a concern about everybody. You know, I know people are left without job. Of course, we're not allowed to work since a year and a half now, so I think it was pretty big for us. On the other hand, though, yes, of course, I'm not allowed to go on tour. I can't travel. I can't go anywhere. But I took a little bit more time to, spend time writing music. I did a lot of session work, practicing, and it also opened a few more doors. For example, like I'm always into writing mostly metal music, but with this quarantine, like I spent some time and discovered some other styles. So I actually I wrote 29 funk songs.
Really?
So yeah, it's really, it was a new thing, because I'm always into studying funk music, as a drummer, but in the music production, and all this stuff, that was a new thing. So in a way, it hasn't, changed much my life, because that's what I'm doing. I'm locked in the studio, creating. So on that term, yeah, like everything is normal. I would say I have a little bit more free time to do such research, about funk music and stuff. So yeah, try to get productive. That's it. Yeah, it gave us a little bit more time, but I'm not gonna lie, like I really miss touring. I can't wait to, for this thing to over, and get back to our fans and, perform around the world. So waiting. Yeah, that's a long time ago. Yeah. I was about 10 years old, I think, when I got into music. Actually, I started playing guitar, which I still do a lot. Then my brother and some friends, they had this idea about forming a band together and all this stuff. And of course, the big problem was always the drummer. Who's going to play the drums and stuff. And I like drums, so I managed to get a drum set and start at that point. I was really young, like I think 11 or 12, something like that, with the drum set. And we formed this band, Extremity Obsession, which was of course my very first band. And I think we achieved some really good things considering the situation back then. For example, like in my city, the city I grew up, because I wasn't in Athens back then, there were no other metal bands. There were very few metal guys, like metal listeners, fans. So like everything was so minimal, like so tiny, which I'm really surprised that we started this thing and I'm here right now, like playing in a metal band, everybody knows. So it was great days. Of course, I remember the first time, the first show we had, and that was in my brother's high school. And of course I was tiny, short hair, like tiny kid, big drum set. So I think we had like 300 people, 400 people there, because not many shows were happening. So when everybody heard about the show, everybody came. It was a free show, obviously. So yeah, it was a good moment. And I think we have the video of that night somewhere. Somebody has it, I don't know. Yeah. My brother was always like a big influence. I mean, together we started, getting into metal music, then into guitar, then of course, with the band. So my brother was always my main influence. And speaking for bands as well, Metallica, Sepultura, Slayer, that's, my favorite bands. Creator, another one. So these were like the bands I was looking up to and, trying to play their music as good as possible and learn. And now I'm really, really happy because, I met most of my heroes, and I did play with, we did tour with Creator, and I did many jams with Max Cavalera, which was one of the greatest things, you know. So yeah, what a moment, you know, playing with Max on stage. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I still remember days, you know, that I was playing over and over Sepultura albums, you know. And of course, you know, we jam with Soulfly, but you know, it's still Max. So yeah, it was an amazing moment. Yeah, I did met a few people, and that was funny because I came with this idea, you know, to release like a DVD, which actually, you know, turned to two DVDs. It was especially for the first one, that was like a rough idea. I was like, okay, let me make like a video CD, not even a DVD, you know. So it wasn't so professional, you know, the whole thing, you know, the setup and everything, and even the sound, you know. So that was with the gear I had back then. And then I was like, okay, now we have too much material. Let's make it a DVD. So I got a girl did the cover, and we started producing, you know, the DVD. And just, you know, when I announced that the DVD is out, it started to really sell like really big. So I got panicked. I was like, oh my God, this is like, it's going great. So what am I doing now? So later on, I found a label, Hudson Music, to re-release it, because it's a lot of weight to take on your shoulders, you know. And of course, it got influenced. I would say, I want to say like many drummers, because we're showing everything, like everything. It's in the DVD. So, you know, the way to play fast, some tips, technique stuff, and of course the inspiration. You know, when you see somebody playing like super fast, and you know, you try to mimic. And I did the same with Derek Roddy's video CD. He had a video CD back in 2002, I think, and I bought it, and had a huge impact on my drumming. I remember one of the most important guys that I heard that they got influenced by my DVD was Francesco Paoli from Flesh God Apocalypse. So he was like, man, I got tired like changing drummers all the time, because he was mainly a guitar player for the band and main composer. And he was like, I bought this DVD and I started playing drums, and I'm like, and then, you know, he became one of the best. So that was a big honor. Yeah. Too many bands. Right now, I'm, you know, involved with many things. First of all, let's start with my main bands, Nile. We have some new songs because of the pandemic. You know, we can't travel, obviously, so we chose to write some music. So we are working on a new album, which I don't know where we're gonna release it, or, you know, even get in the studio. But we take this time, you know, and make something productive. Now, my other band, Royal Time Machine, which is a progressive fusion band, we have the album ready. We're finishing actually touches on the guitars. I think is some reamping left to do, and then we're gonna look for a label. I don't know, and we have a new album with them. What else? My solo project, I have 7 songs ready. My metal solo project, and my brass project, I call it, with a lot of brass instruments. It's like funk, maybe some jazz touches, you know, sometimes. I have too many songs for this one, so probably I will pick up maybe like 8 songs and release an album. So this is going to be for 2021 for sure, and my metal solo album. And also there is another band which I'm working right now. They called Balgevath. It's black metal. And I do drums and all the music arrangement on this one. And actually I got the project right now open here on my computer, and it sounds amazing. I think this is going to be a big surprise for many people. Killer black metal, like a dark funeral style. But there's a lot of orchestrations and stuff, like too many instruments. So yeah, I spent a good time with this one, and I really enjoyed. As for Tier now, that was a really fun session, you know, back then. They called me, they're like, okay, we were thinking to hire you to do the album. So I went there. I was actually on tour right before the session. So when I got back from the tour, I had 2 days to stay home, and then I flew to Denmark to learn the songs. I didn't know the songs, and you know, do the session. And the funny thing was, I think we did the drums in about 5 hours. It was 13 songs, so we worked like, let's say we were recording 3 good hours the first day, and the second day it took us like 2 more hours, and we were done. Super cool guys. Great memories from that session for sure. Well, if they call me again, I will go for sure. Yeah, you know, for me, I do work as a session player, so I do many recordings for different bands. You know, they just send me emails and they get in touch, and I'm like, okay, let me hear the music. And I actually kind of prefer to not play for metal bands, for extreme metal, sorry. And you know, it gives me the opportunity to explore that new style. For example, like Tyr was a lot of fun because it was different from what I'm doing. So for me, whoever calls me, whoever emails me, you know, no matter which style, I'll play for sure. I mean, it's a job, obviously, but I do enjoy it a lot. Recently, I played a pop song for a singer here in Athens, and she was like, "Well, we want you to play the drums." I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool. Pop music. I played pop, so I did that too." It's one song only. It's one single, and they're mixing right now. Some amazing musicians playing there, and the producer is really famous. So we'll see. Well, it's a ballad, you know, so it's not like actual like. So I had to really calm down and, you know, just do the job. Yeah.
No blast beats.
No. The most important thing, I think, was that they gave the freedom to the drummer to compose drums, right? Back then, I mean, with Pete Hamura back in like the 90s almost, you know, he was the drummer for the band. Then for Black Seeds of Vengeance, they hired Derek Roddy, which, you know, obviously he did a session. Then they got Tony Laureano, but I think the drums were pre-written, you know. And when they hired me, they just wanted to give me the chance to come up with my own drum parts. So I think that was the big change. And when I joined the band, that was the moment that we were doing the next big step for the band. So we wanted to release like a really, really important album, so we get a ticket, you know, for a bigger label, which we did. Annihilation of the Wicked was a really good album with great feedback from the press and fans and everyone. So we did the next step and went to Nuclear Blast. So I think the teamwork, they finally found a drummer who was committed 100%. And I even told them on the first album that I'm here to stay. So I'm not here to make an album and make my name and get out, you know? So yeah, 17 years later, I was right. Yeah. You know, I didn't audition for this band, like for Nile. I mean, they saw videos of me and they're like, okay, this guy can play. We had a meeting in US. So I flew there and I had no idea what I'm going to do, you know. So I flew there and they're like, okay, let's jam. So after the first official jam, you know, with all 4 of us, they announced me, okay, you are our drummer. I'm like, cool, that's really cool. So what are we doing now? Well, we write the new album. I'm like, what? So 2 months later, I was in the studio recording. Like everything happened like so quickly. I had no idea. I know people are really, you know, there is actually 3 albums that people got like really attached with Nile. One was In the Darkest Shrines, which was really a very important album, and for me as well as a fan. Then Annihilation of the Wicked is probably the most famous one that we did. I don't know. And Ithifalic, I think Ithifalic has had a big impact to the crowd as well. You know, to me, it's always the newest album what really counts. You know, so I have great memories from Annihilation of the Wicked and Ithifalic. You know, I'm really proud of what we did, and I really enjoy if I listen to it sometimes. You know, but you know, to me, the last album, the most, you know, the newest album that we have, it's always the most important and the best one in my ears, you know, especially with the latest one, Vile Nilotic Rights. That was a big step for us. Like we took off musically. So for me, this is by far the most important. But I respect, you know, everybody who says Annihilation or Ithifalic. Well, we are older. We play better music. We compose better music. So like everything is like more mature. But especially the composing area, like the composition, they're like way more mature, and we tried like new elements as well. So there's a lot of new elements, but not like changing direction. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it's still Nile. You can hear it's Nile, but it's more fresh. That's why, you know, to me, it's always the latest album. And now we write new songs, and the goal is to make the best album ever. That's always the goal. You never go for like, okay, let's just make, you know, like an average album. No. There are so many, like for different styles. Like, you know, you can't have like a top 3 drummers for sure. So let me just talk about some of them. Let's say Mike Mangini is one really important drummer for me. Not the years in Dream Theater only, but way back from Annihilator. Stevie Vai, you know, like amazing drummer as a clinician and everything. Virgil Donati, amazing, like one of the biggest influences for sure. Thomas Lang, also a main influence, you know, especially for my DVDs and that my clinician part, you know. So many. Gerko Borlai is a good friend of mine, and he's a beast. He's a amazing drummer, big influence. Stanton Moore was my main influence to start the brass thing, the brass project, and, you know, get involved with like funk, you know. There's so many. Like I have to, you know, I need 2 more days, you know, to name everybody. But yeah, of course, Dave Weckl, Vinny Colaiuta, you know, Steve Gadd, you know, all these guys. It never ends, and there is no like specific style. You know, drummers, like you get influence from everybody, no matter which style, you know, and that's the beauty of the instrument. Of course. Let me talk about metal drummers. Kevin Paradis is a French drummer. We did one tour. He was playing for Melekesh back then. He's an amazing drummer, I think. This morning, well, he's not a young drummer, but, you know, I was watching some clips from Romain Goulon, another French drummer. Amazing drummer as well. Extreme drummer, but, you know, also progressive. So many. I got some students here in Greece. They're also, I think, the next, I don't know, the next generation, you know. One of them is called George Melios. He's I think he's 21 or something. He plays for a band they called Rapture, and yeah, George has it 100%. He's a great metal drummer, but he's also like he's following my steps, like getting involved with funk and jazz, and you know, like add things to his drumming, you know. So I think this guy has a future as well. Yeah, too many. You know, if I go on YouTube, and you know, I will probably find like another 2 amazing drummers, you know, like in one minute, you know, within 1 minute. So there are so many amazing players. Some of them nobody knows them yet. Some others, you know, they grew their name a little bit, but you know, it never ends. And now with YouTube, you discover like some amazing musicians. They're not even musicians. They're just, you know, hobbyists. So yeah, influence everywhere. I think it's playing, like just playing every day. It's what keeps you in shape. Of course, you know, taking care of your body, and you know, it's not sports that you have to be on a specific diet and have like a specific weight or something. Like it's not that crucial, but you know, you have to take care of your body for sure. Do some sports, exercise a little bit, and of course, play every day. That's what I say to my students as well. Like, for example, some of them, they ask me like, "Oh man, I have a studio. You know, in 2 months we are tracking our new album, or you know, our first album, whatever." And I know they have minimal studio experience. So first of all, you need the experience, and the second thing is to be like as familiar as possible with the songs. Like you gotta know the songs as good as possible. Like you gotta be able to know to sing like every note of these songs, right? So I'm like, okay, drop the practicing routine that you have, and play the songs every day. That's it. Even do a simulation, like, you know, imagine like you're tracking the album, and that will get you like 20% better. Or if you go on tour, people go on tour, and then they, you know, when they come back, they're like, "Oh man, I feel so much better." You know why? Because you play every day. This is it.
So the secret formula is playing every day.
Playing every day, yes, and playing the songs, like that's really, really important. For example, obviously, you know, after 17 years in Nile, I don't have to play every day. So I have, you know, I did my miles, but I do play a Nile concert at my studio 3 times a week. Yeah, well, it's a longer set as well. It's around 2 hours. So after my practicing and I'm tired, my brain is a little bit, you know, tired as well. I'm like, okay, let me do a show, and I just play a show, just to keep me in shape, you know. So I don't want to lose that the intensity, you know, like playing Nile songs and everything. Of course, sometimes I have to skip that show simulation, and you know, work on a session studio, record for my projects and stuff. But yeah, I try to play at least 3 shows a week. Yeah. First of all, I play Vicford sticks pretty much all my life, and right now I have a signature model which is under my name from Vicford. So obviously I play my sticks. They're like, you know, I think it's actually a very versatile stick, and fits pretty much every style. It was based on the 55As that people know. It's just a different tip because I play very heavy ride, and you know, we needed a different tip so it doesn't break that often. So yeah, my signature sticks for every style. Like I don't have other sticks actually, only, you know, tones of my signature stick. Anyways, now the cymbals, I choose, I would say, lighter cymbals, because I use a lot of cymbals, you know, when I'm playing. For example, I got 4 crashes and 4 chinas, and the chinas are like 2 on the right side, which is, you know, when I play blast beats, for example, I got them as accenting, you know, to add a little bit more groove. So you play like taga 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 ta ta ta. You know, all these accents. You know, gives a little bit more groove, which I really like. And of course, I do the same for the left side. You know, another 2 chinas for my left hand. And because there's so many cymbals, and you know, I choose the most non-metal cymbals, non-rock cymbals. So I try not to play heavy cymbals because they're way too loud. I choose more like smooth. It's all Sabians, mostly HHX. So I would say some of these cymbals can be used in, I don't know, jazz maybe. You know, I like more smooth cymbals. I'm really away from the rock metal cymbals for years now because they're way too loud, and you know, I'm deaf already. So
okay.
The reason I play 1-foot blast and even the swivel thing, they're all came from other drummers. For example, like I think the first one who did the swivel thing, which is just a motion, you know. And of course, the 1-foot blast, we call him the godfather of the blast beat. That's Pete Sandoval from Morbid Angel, right? So Pete was the man. Like he was the first that he got the blast beat in a box, like, you know, with a label and everything. So he was pushing the 1-foot, and I think we all learned from him. Then another huge influence for blast beats was actually Derek Roddy. He used to play for Hate Eternal back then, and of course he did a Nile album as well. Now Derek took it on the next level because he was playing like insane speeds, like 250, 260 BPM, you know, and you know, like people would not believe back then that was possible. So Pete was the reason I was pushing back then, but then I heard Derek and I was pushing to match, you know, Derek, you know, to get at his level. And then I joined Nile, and they were pushing the tempos, and I just played the songs, and everything turned faster, and I just got used to it. But the funny thing with blast beats was like, there's 2 ways to play the blast beat. One is going to be with 1 foot, so the right foot, for example, plays 8th notes, or you split them into both legs, so right, left. So that's like some people call it European blast, or the lazy blast, or the economy blast. You know, there are many, you know, but it's 100% more easy. The reason I didn't do the easier blast was lack of knowledge. I had no idea there was a blast like that, you know. So I was listening to drummers playing with 2-foot blasts, you know, use like 2-foot blasts, and I was like, man, they're so fast, I got to play faster, you know. So I was pushing, and now I ended up, you know, playing everything with 1 foot. I had no idea there was the economy blast, or the, you know, the Euro blast, how they call it. So yeah, for me, I was listening to bands, I was like, man, this is so fast, and I was pushing. And so the main goal is like, keep pushing. Like if you keep pushing something, you know, you're gonna play great one day, for sure. I know Cenotaph, a pretty old band, right? Like
yeah,
they go
like
back in the day. Yeah,
or more.
Yeah. I know these guys for sure. I haven't heard anything more recent, to be honest, but I know it's a lot of metal crowds in Turkey. I've been to Istanbul once for a drum clinic, and that's my daughter. So and the dog. Anyways, so I've been to Istanbul one time. I try to remember the year. It was like 2010 maybe. I don't remember. It's been years ago, but amazing. I had a great time. I met great people, and I tried to make it there again, but nobody invites me, you know. I mean, I don't know, maybe not many people do drum clinics there. I don't know, but the second time I will get an invitation, you know. Of course I want to get there again. And it's so funny because we fly to the States via Istanbul all the time, so in Turkey like pretty often. At the airport, of course. No. I watch a lot of traditional stuff. I don't remember names, to be honest, but mostly I watch players from Turkey who play oud, for example, like more like string instruments. I like that part because it's an influence in what I do. But yeah, drummers, unfortunately, not many. No. Oud, for example. Yeah, oud. Yeah, we call it uti here. And of course, the best players are from Turkey. So we got some players here as well, but that's like comes from Turkey. Like the coffee, we have the coffee here. They call it Greek. I call it Turkish because it's Turkish. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
That's the first time a Greek says it's Turkish coffee.
It is. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
It's the coffee, you know. Yeah, I don't know why people call it Greek coffee here, but it's definitely, you know, I remember in Istanbul walking outside some coffee shops, and I had this smell like, you know, it was coffee, which smells like really similar here, you know, the coffee shop. So I think we share a lot of similarities, you know, on food as well.
Like baklava.
Baklava, oh my God, that's so killer. I like to eat. I don't like to fight for baklava, you know. So I think, to me, I don't know, it sounds Turkish. Sometimes, you know, people just want to, you know, disagree for not important stuff. For me, like I said, I like your a lot of Turkish foods, and the coffee. I'm not a huge fan. So sometimes I will drink like a Greek Turkish coffee, you know, but not very often. Mostly French. That's the coffee I like. I will tell you what happened. What happened was, you know, there are some countries that in order to get in the country, you got to have what we call the carnet. And the carnet is like, it can be a piece of paper or, you know, a computer document or something, which tells in detail all the gear that you have. For example, you have one guitar, serial number, okay? Drum pedals, serial number, like everything has to be with serial number and everything. So when you get into the country, you're showing the papers and like, okay, this is the gear we have, we go to do a show. And when you come out, you have exactly the same instruments. So imagine how much time would it take to check every instrument, every carnet for 4 bands. There's no way we could make the show. Yes, there was no way. Plus, I remember Fuel by Fire, they didn't have a cornet. So we had to leave Fuel by Fire out of the tour. I mean, where? And then try to get in Istanbul to do the show. But people at the borders gave us so much shit. Like, I was so pissed off. Not from the Turkish side only, but also from the Greek side. Like, it's like people at the borders from both countries, they tried to do as much as possible to cancel a show. I was so pissed.
We have so many canceled shows because of this border problems, actually.
Yeah, in a way, I get it because, you know, for example, Turkish is very famous with cymbals. You know, you make pretty much every cymbal. So, you know, drum cymbals. And people will get there and buy like tons of cymbals, and then they will come to Greece or any other country and sell them. So I get it. You know, it's some rules, some countries have it. In India, for example, I tried to get into for a drum clinic. Man, I was at the airport like 6 hours or 7 hours. Like, they were checking my stuff. And I had 2 drum pedals, drumsticks. Like, yeah, in some countries, there are some specific rules, and it kind of looks like they try to do everything, so you cancel and you get back to where you are. But yeah, finally we didn't make it. But it was not only the carnet thing that Fuel by Fire didn't have, but otherwise, I mean, we will get them in a hotel or something. We will do the shows, but both sides of the border were like unbelievably rude, and they just didn't let us do the show. And that was an amazing package. We're talking about Creator, Morbid Angel, Nile, and Fuel by Fire. That was like a great tour. We were on the road for 2 months. We were playing almost every day for 2 months. Amazing. So I'm really sad we didn't make it, because that was one of the best tours, if not the best tour I ever did. So it was a great package. Hopefully next time we can make it. I think flying is more safe. We can carry guitars and then play whatever gear we find, like we do when we go to South America or Japan or anywhere.
I hope we can see you in the future.
I hope so too, for drum clinic as well. I want to say that I'm really, really sorry that we didn't make the show that time. And I really want to come to Turkey and play, if possible, more than one show, because I would like to explore the country, and not only the, Istanbul, for example. I would like to travel maybe more like at the center of the country, and check, like meet the real culture. That to me, that's always where the real thing is. Same for every country. So yeah, please invite us. Please invite me. Like, I want to get there, for a drum clinic anytime and spend a couple of days and see Turkey again. Cheers. Bye-bye.